So, welcome everybody. We're back here again in our first conversation in the new year 2019.
Good afternoon.
So, we hope you made it nicely into the new year without too much disturbances, without too much of a hangover. And today we are back with another conversation. The title of today's conversation is The Biblical Generations from Eden to Exodus in 26 Steps, a Hebrew perspective.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody.
So, one of the aspects that we would like to talk about a bit today is there are these very strange parts in the Bible where it just goes on and on about genealogies. This was the son of this, and this was the son of that. And it's just like, it reads like a bit of a telephone book, wouldn't you say?
Yes,
So, and it's like, it's very strange. You would wonder, like, the Bible is supposed to speak about these great ideas, right? What is the meaning of life, or what is God, or why are we here, how to be a good person. And the question is why are there these lists in the middle of all of this, right? So turns out that if you research this a bit, there are actually quite some interesting patterns behind these seemingly random lists of generations, and maybe they're not at all just meant historically, or like some kind of a record to track who gets to inherit what.
this is true.
So, let's start.
We shall start from the first Adam, like Adam from Eden. And I have a double voice here. Hello? Good afternoon, everybody. We shall start to see a pattern in a human behavior in which God presents himself through time and space. But in order to see this, we shall look at the name first. The name
Right, so
of
this
God
is the name. We talked about this before,
is written
right?
in 4 letters, Yod He, Vav He, and it's expressed in the numbers of 10, 5, 6, and 5. Together is 26.
And if I may say something, we talked about this before, that this word is generally said it's the unpronounceable name of God, right?
Yes, this is true.
So we mentioned that before, and I think in our last conversation or the one before, that it's not actually in the sense that it's forbidden to pronounce this name, but it's more that actually it can't be pronounced.
Yes.
I mean, you could add up the vowels and the consonants of this word and kind of to pronounce something, but it's not really accurate. And this is why the tradition says, you know what, it's not really possible. Because in this structure of the name, it's not even called God, by the way, right? What the Bible translates as Lord is simply called the name in Hebrew.
Yes.
And because it's more about the structure of what it actually means than some kind of anthropomorphism. Some
true.
old man in the skies with some beard or something, that they couldn't be further from it. In fact, all of this is about some underlying structure of reality. I hope I didn't interrupt you there. I just wanted to summarize this for our listeners.
It's good. So the name of God is expressed. I have double voice at the moment. It's hard to speak. 1 second. And we see the name express itself through the generations, through the lineage of Adam. Now we shall see the slide. From Adam to Noah, we have 10 generations, which express by the letter Yod, which the first letter of the name. We can see here in the next slide is expressed in the names of people.
Right, there you can see all the 10 generations listed up. So maybe would you like to read out the generations?
Again, please.
Would you like to read out the 10 generations for our listeners?
Yes. Adam, Shet, Enosh, Canaan, Mahalalel, Yerd, Chanoch, Metushelach, Lemech, and Noach.
So those were like the first 10.
Those are the 10 generations from Adam to Noach.
Mm-hmm.
And after the Noach generation, or while Noach was living, there was the generations of the flood. Here we can see there is a cut in a human lineage, and we see the generations of the flood.
Right, so after or with Noah in his lifetime, there was a cut, so to speak, in the story of the biblical generations.
Yes.
And we're dealing with a new chapter, so to speak.
Yes.
So you have the first 10,
The
and then
first
comes
10.
the generation of the flood.
Yes. And from Noach.
Oh, 1 second.
Yes.
Just wanted to point out also briefly for those who have listened to previous conversations, you may remember here the word for generation of the flood in Hebrew, that's Dor HaMabul.
Mm-hmm.
So Mabul, we talked about the root for this word, how it actually relates to Bavel, which is Babylon,
Mm-hmm.
or the word for confusion in Hebrew,
Bilbul.
Bilbul.
Okay.
So, which very quickly gives us an idea that this was not some historical catastrophe of a great flood. Perhaps it also was, perhaps, but the Hebrew letters seem to tell us kind of a different story as well. So this was the generation of some kind of a great confusion, you might say also.
Yes. The first 10 generations after Adam, after eating from the tree of knowledge, Adam was expelled from the Garden of Eden, and he lived outside of the garden. And all the generations that came through him, through Cain, first Cain, and Cain also disappeared during the generations, but it was like damaged up because all those children of his were as a consequence of this eating from I know, this ego part, and all his children had this notion of I know, this is why I'm so big.
Mm-hmm.
Until humanity could not longer exist, and only one family, after 10 generations from Adam, the family of Noah, went into the ark to save them from this confusion of me and myself. And from Noah family we have a new lineage of humanity which is more narrow. It starts only from one family, but like, so to speak, a clean concept.
Okay.
What is very interesting, why does the lineage after the flood continue through Noah and his sons, is because Noah has a perception of not just a bipolar behavior like the generations before him. He has like 3 lines of thinking. He can think positive, he can see the negative, and he can go between.
So again,
Things
this is to look at the biblical figures here, not so much as historical figures, but more as, if you want, archetypes within us, or some kind of like qualities within a person.
Plus also the name Noah is not in Hebrew, is also comfortable. So when a person doesn't have to run between opposites, he can sit comfortably in the middle. So he has a sense of peace, a sense of harmony and a sense of building the future. Because when a person usually rounds between I'm either a superhero, like omnipotent, or
nothing.
impotent,
Yeah, exactly.
it's hard.
Okay.
And this is why the new lineage has to start from something positive, and Noach is the one. This is why they say Noach matzah chen b'nei Hashem. He find a grace in the name of the Lord, because he's like a middleman. Like he knows the right. He says positive, negative, and he can see cuts through between. Like
But
he has the peace and the harmony. Yes.
Is
please.
that like that? The flood came as a punishment because life was too convenient, or what are you trying to say?
The flood came because people did not want to hear there is a way of peace and the way of harmony. They just, each one of the generations before Noach, just people used to do things just to get a reputation or just to get power by people. They used to take advantage of other people. They used to take women's of others people's, and it was very, very corrupted society.
Okay.
And of which, when the society is so corrupted, there's no future, there's no moral values, nothing.
So it led into this great confusion.
Yes.
That's very interesting what you mentioned about bipolar or a kind of extreme psychological swaying between like I'm on top of the world, I'm worth nothing at all. And I think that's something that many people can relate to.
Yes.
Even nowadays on the internet, you post a picture on Instagram, you get thousands of likes, and the next picture doesn't get any likes at all. And suddenly it's like, oh my God, who am I?
Yes,
Where's my life, right?
Yes, when there's no approval from the surrounding, who am I?
Exactly.
Only when I'm approved by others, meaning I get my candy and I'm alive, like Candy Kine. Yes, I'm the person who owns things, yes. And if I own likes or own attention, this is the thing, own attention. I worth something, or I'm somebody, and if I don't get too much attention or at all, I'm not existing. So,
but here we have a next level that is being opened.
Again, please, I did not hear.
Here is the next level that is being opened.
Yes, there is a family, the family of Noach, of which humanity can start fresh, like F5, and start fresh with a new perception, life perception. And since Noach has 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Yefet. Shem, Ham, and Yefet. Shem from the name, Ham from warm, and Yefet from beauty. He has 3 sons, but the Lord says the fact that Noach has 3 sons, it doesn't mean just 3 physical, biological sons, but the fact that he can move between 3 understanding.
Ah, okay. That's interesting.
Yes, the Shem represents grace. The name of the Lord is grace, amazing grace. Ham in Hebrew is also the letters of Moach, the ability to think.
The brain, right?
The brain. This is why Ham also becomes dark later. When we too much think, we get on fire, like professors.
We burn out.
We burn out. And Yefet is the middle line. So is the peace and the harmony. This is why it's the beauty. When the Greek says the true, the beauty, and
the good, the true, and the beautiful,
come together. So Noah hold those premises. This is why he went into the ark.
Okay.
When he goes out from the ark, we see his son Shem, the amazing grace. He continues the lineage, and then we can see now the second letter of the name, the letter He, proceed and expand through time and space. The letter He has the number 5 on the left. It's written on the slide. And we see here 5 generations. Shem, the son of Noach, he was a priest. Arpachshad, his son. Shelach, his son. Ever, his son. He's the father of all Hebrew people to come.
Why is that?
Yeah, what?
I thought Abraham is the father of all Hebrew people, no?
Yeah, but Ever, upon his name, Abraham was named
Oh,
by
really?
Hebrew. Yeah. Ever. And from Ever, his son, he has a son called Peleg. Peleg in Hebrew is a part, also a stream of water, but also a part. Like in Hebrew we say miflaga, a party. So it's a part in
Like a political party also.
like a political party. In the time, or in the generation, in the time of Peleg's life, the people had started to split, because in his time they built the Babylon Tower, and here we can see another start, because
Dor
this,
HaPalaga.
yes, the generations that built the Babylon Tower is named Dor HaPalaga, the divided generations, because they don't speak in the same manner anymore. It's not one
Right,
speech anymore.
We talked about this a bit last time.
Yes. So again, we see, I repeat all the time that we shall see the pattern, how does it occur in time and space. So we have 10 generations from Adam to Noach, which express in the letter Yod. This is how the name, how God reveals itself through time and space. We have 10 generations from Adam, Noach, until the flood. And from Noach's sons, Shem, until Peleg, until the Tower of Babylon, we see the letter He through 5 generations. And then we move to a third kind of lineage, which express in the letter Vav, in the third letter of the name. The letter Vav is represented by the number 6. And in this lineage of 6 generations, we see the following: Reu, and then his son Srug, and then his son Nahor, and then his son Terach, and then his son Abraham, and then his son Yitzchak or Isaac. And after we see this expression, space of time of 6 generations, at the day that Abraham was told by the angels that he will have a son, in the same day, one of the angels goes to Sodom and opposite Sodom. And after the 6 generations of those, we have a cut, and we meet the generation of Sodom, which is deleted completely, because God opposite Sodom and Gomorrah, and we see a new start.
So again, another catastrophe and a reset, so to speak.
Yes, true. And then we move on, and we see another expression of the letter. This is the last letter of the name, the letter He, which express in the number 5 and in the 5 following generations. Yaakov, and then his son Levi, and his son Kehat, and his son Amram, and his son Moshe, which known as Moses, and he will lead Israel outside of Egypt. Those 5 generations are named, or we name them as the 4th generations, because it's related to the 4th letter of the name, and also mentioned in a happening that happened to Abraham, the covenant between the pieces, that his children of children will be slaves in a country which is not theirs, and they will suffer, but the 4th generation will return. So this is why we name this part of the last lineage as the 4th generations. 4th generations, because before him we have 3 catastrophes: the flood, the Babylon, the Sodom generation. This is the 3rd, and the 4th is the generation who is really sunk deep down in Egypt.
Right, this is where all of this story comes to a standstill almost, where the catastrophes become so big that nothing is moving anymore.
Yes. And here we made another slide to show again the name, to remember again.
Right, there we can see it again. I think it's fascinating what you're trying to say here, if I may say so, that the name of God, so to speak, what is translated as the Lord in the English text, actually is composed of these 4 letters, and each of these 4 letters contain exactly the right amount or the right counting that correlates perfectly to the generations.
Yes.
So we have 10 generations again for the Yod from
Adam to Noah.
Noah. Then we have 5 generations from
Shem to Peleg until
That's the
Babylon.
Then we have the Vav, the 6, which is the 6th generation from
Babylon to Sodom.
And last but not least, another Hay, another 5 generations
from Jacob to Moses.
Which all adds up to this 26.
Yes.
Which is fascinating, because it seems here that the name itself has some kind of a structure to it.
Yes,
Well,
and it's yes, please.
You could ask now, right? Like, is this a coincidence? How come, right? All these like different lists of names and generations, and it's quite a long story, the whole thing, and it all adds up to exactly this kind of structure, even in the same sequence of 10, 5, 6, 5. I mean, it's not even that it comes out in a different order or something. It's precisely this order and precisely this value of this name.
Yes, people could not, human being could not create such a structure.
This is the fascinating
it's
thing.
Impossible that human being will create such a structure. It's impossible.
This is what I appreciate about this kind of like Hebrew studies that you're sharing here with us, is that we see certain patterns in the code expressed through the Hebrew language, which really make you think about all of this.
Yes.
Because there is this idea floating around, right? The Bible is some kind of a patchwork, a literary project between many different people. But you start to wonder when you read all of this that actually this is quite a mysterious text or phenomenon by itself. Yes. And perhaps it's not at all what we think it is.
This is why this is one of the, if people wants to say that different people composed the Bible or the 5 books of Moses, it's impossible. Because such a thing a human being cannot create.
This is just one of these examples,
yes,
right? There are many more.
We shall go inside more and more during this conversation, but it's not a product of people who travel here on the planet for 120 years. It's not a fruit.
Right, but then the question is, what is it if it's not, right?
To increase the wonder, we shall move to the next slide and see how wonderful it is. If people want really to look inside, maybe you can read this in English.
Right, so we have here again the structure of 10, 5, 6, 5. So you wrote here the 10 stands for the flood generation.
Yes, the 10 generations from the beginning, from Adam to Noah, and there's a line, there's a cut in the lineage, and this cut in the human lineage is expressed through the element of water, because the flood is water from up and down, and there's a cut to humanity expressed in the element of water. And then we have 5 generations, the dividing generation, generations.
This is again the generation of the Babylon and dividing separation of languages.
Yes, and it's expressed in the wind or the air or the spirit, because when people speak out, words or languages, they throw out air.
Or I'm just thinking about the idea that they wanted to build a tower that touches the sky, right?
Yes, of course. And this tower stands from the land until it reaches the sky. It has to go through air, through the atmosphere.
Exactly. It's pretty windy up there.
This is physically, but mentally, when we speak, when every person speaks, so he takes air, pushes air from inside of the mouth outside. And when we don't understand, we have a lot of turbulences of misunderstanding. This is why the Tower of Babylon, or the generation of the Tower of Babylon, is expressed in the element of air or wind,
all right,
or spirit. While then we have 6 generations until Sodom generation, which express the destruction is expressed by the element of fire.
Right, because those cities were burned down, right?
Yes. There was like from the heavens, from the sky, they threw it at them esh v'gofrit, like sulfur and fire and God knows what. Still, it's very hot in those places. If people visited once,
it's around the Dead Sea, right? In southern Israel.
It's so hot. Person can faint there if it doesn't have protection of water or air conditioning. It's still fiery. And then we have 5 more generations from Jacob to Moses, and when the people really enslaved for hundreds of years, in which the slavery or the cut express itself through the earth, the ashes and the dust. People build always in.
Right, you build the pyramids from the earth, right? People were literally turned into dust. We talked about this as well.
Yes,
the slavery was so extreme that people just died where they were standing and were integrated into the buildings. They become literally part of the earth or those building projects.
Yes. So if to add on the wonder that we had before, it's not just the structures of the generation is structured as the name itself, but also the element which are cutting the lineage every time when there is catastrophe is also wonder, because we have 4 elements, as we have 4 seasons of the year. As we know, there are 4 elements all the time in astrology, in everything. So also those 4 elements are presented here in the same structure of generation. So it cannot be a mistake.
Right. So again, there's this question, what is this name, right? That people are so eager to pronounce and say, I don't know, Jehovah or something, and just try to read the letters and the consonants together. But where the ancient Hebrew people, they say, no, you cannot pronounce this.
Yes.
It's not at all what you think. We're dealing with something very, very different here.
In a way, it's the being, but you cannot pronounce it because it expresses itself in being simultaneously at so many different places. And
right, yes.
It's just cannot. It's just
it's
impossible.
Like we cannot describe. It's like they always say, a fish doesn't know what water is, right? Because he lives in it. All of his world is water. So we cannot really describe what being is. But through these kinds of biblical Hebrew studies, we might get a certain glimpse of what we're dealing with here. Almost like, I always feel these kind of approaches are a bit like, it's a bit like physics, but in a psychological way.
Yes, it's physics and mathematics, but also you can apply it into psychology.
Right.
Because we tend in the modern world to separate between the branches.
Exactly.
Like there's only physics, mathematics, only linguistics, only art, and each one cannot speak to the other. But in ancient time, like people of the Renaissance and people before, they could unite. They could relate to everything as a whole. Like we spoke about the generation of Babylon before.
Right.
This one language is a holy language, and they could see everything.
It is pretty fascinating. So. And it's also then this question that I think you wanted to share with us, this little story around this, right? That when the people were all locked in this great slavery, suddenly comes this character called Moses.
Yes.
And says, you know what? Come with me. We're going to leave this now. We're going to go out of here. Leave everything that you know and come with me. And
why should they believe? Why should generations of slaves that has nothing, and they don't see any end to this, and just see that they deliver children, that even their children and their great children will be slaves? Why should they believe him? To any person who comes and says there is a way we can go out. Plus, this person who comes to speak to them, he grew in the palace of Pharaoh.
He's part of the establishment.
Yes, he's a prince. He's a smart prince. And why? So how would they know that he's not come to drown them for more 1,000 years in slavery?
Right. So they're obviously very critical. We tend to think that people were kind of stupid, like, right?
Yes.
They believe in all of these things, but actually no, they're very critical of this, which I think they have a right to be. Everybody should be critical.
Yes. Why should you come and tell me stories if my life is in a mess?
Exactly.
Who are you, and why should I believe you? Anyways, everything is doomed. So why should I listen to you?
Yeah, so how did he convince the Hebrew people that he actually is like divinely inspired, right? Like
Yes, because he knows that the Hebrew people always tell in their families the story of the former fathers, and he knows he can name the name of the fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And
So
he
people
says,
were aware of this whole chain. It is
Yes.
part of the tradition. People were
Yes.
remembering all of those names. Yeah.
and they know because their parents and the parents and the parents told them that God revealed himself to the fathers in the name of El Shaddai. This is also one of his names, but of his revealed names. And Moses knew that if he will talk to the Hebrew people in the name of El Shaddai, it's also to speak to them in a limited way, because it's not the infinite, the ability of infinite in the name.
Okay, could
So
you
to
explain that a bit? Yeah?
Yes. There is an aspect of the name which is revealed, which what we see in the eyes of human eyes, and it's limited in space and time. Sometimes we see a picture of something, but it is dependent on the time of the day, in the seasons of the year. This is limited. And there is an aspect, the infinite aspect of life, which we cannot anchor in a picture or an image. And Moses has had to come and to speak to the Hebrew people or the leaders in a non-restricted way, to come to speak to people and say or speak on the behalf of the infinite power of life which is stored in a person. And it's really hard, because those people did not know that this power is stored in them, because they were enslaved for generations. So they could not believe that they're stored an infinite power who can cause them changes in their lives. And he has to speak to this element to them, but they are not acknowledged. They don't know that this power is stored in them. So how can he speak to them if they don't know the name? Or they're not aware of this power that is stored in them? And then he comes and take the lineage as an answer. If you don't believe me, you believe probably to the story of the fathers, okay? So here is the stories of the father. From Adam until Noah, we have 10 generations. From Shem, his son, to Peleg, we have 5 generations. So we already have 2 letters of the name. And then we have 6 generations from Babylon to Sodom, which is Vav. So we have Yehu. And then we have 5 generations from Jacob to our generation, 5 again. And then we have 26 generation, like the numeral value of the name. So this, I speak to you on behalf of this name. And you see, you know the lineage, you have the books of names, you can follow the journal. So I cannot lie to you.
He's not telling them just believe in me, right? Like this
No.
is it. I'm on a mission.
The same power, yes, who built this lineage and destroyed it after certain generations because it could not continue without values. The same power comes and talk to you through me, and to give them. Also, if you want to look at this, his name Moshe, and we see on the left side of the slide, Moshe,
Moses in
Mem
English,
Shin Hey, is the same. If we write the letters differently, is Hashem, is the name. He speaks to you. This infinite power of life comes and speaks to you through the name Moshe.
So in a way, he brings them a pretty compelling proof, so to speak, right?
Yes.
So
Question, will they listen to him? Do you think it was that easy? With all these proofs.
Despite these proofs, people still tend to be, how does it say, stiff-necked, right?
They could not listen to him because they had a short spirit. They just running between construction sites and being beaten on their back. So when a person is being beaten on his back, and he just wants to go aside and have a deep breath because he can't, because
Isn't
he
that
has
like
short
nowadays
spirit.
a bit also?
because it's not an historical. This is the most interesting
That's
thing.
what I wanted
is
to
that
ask you. Yeah, like
it's not an historical, not just. It happened also in history, but is a print in a human soul, or it's a human life here on a planet. That and how everything started from the forbidden fruit of I know. When person starts to think that he knows, whatever comes from this taste of I know will narrow him down more and more and more and more until when people wants to concrete their life of a very, very sorted day, structured day, they bring on themselves compelled slavery.
Could you explain that a bit more?
Sometimes people, they don't want to move to the unknown. They don't want to move to another surrounding.
It's scary and inconvenient after all.
Yes,
right? It's not comfortable.
To move to another job. They know that they're limited. I mean, let's say their talents are limited in this job, and if they would find another job, or they will go for independency, they will they could express their capability better, or at most, but they're afraid to go to the unknown, because I go to the office from 8 to 4, and then I have promised salary in certain date of the month, and I know this is my co-office friends, though if I don't like them so much, but still
it's familiar, yeah?
It's familiar, and every day I take my car, I take my train, I take the bus, I know everything is like well concrete, and my life is sheltered. I know once in a week I go to the supermarket or the grocery.
Right. Like many people say, life isn't great, but at least I know what to expect.
Yes. Yes, but this, and then people start to narrow themselves more and more down, They just meet the same friend. They don't try to meet or to associate with unfamiliar people.
Not to mention unfamiliar ideas. Like
Yes.
perhaps those kind of ideas that we're talking about here.
Yes.
It is what I was just thinking about when you were saying in the slavery of Egypt, the conditions were so hard that people just didn't have any spirit to listen to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Just want to go to the corner and nobody will beat them, that they could have a deeper breath, which they could not have.
That's also something that we can relate to, I think, right? That we're just running around trying to make sure to cover the bills, to appear everywhere on time, and at the end of the day, I also have to think about my life. That's just a bit much, right?
Mm-hmm. Plus, imagine that the people who bite us as a slave is not just an external Egyptian policeman, but...
Did we talk about this a bit in the past?
I'm not sure.
So maybe
I'm not
you
sure
could,
about Pharaoh inside of us, yes?
So maybe you could speak to this for a bit.
Because the King Pharaoh is not just the king who was... mentioned in the history, like on hieroglyph or in the pyramids, or like name of a king that used to mention on stones. Is each and every one of us has a pharaoh which governs him and tell him that he cannot be anything but a slave, like a person who brings family and supports his family, and he cannot be somebody beyond this. He cannot be somebody which is beyond time and space. He doesn't have a spirit. He's just like a part of a machine who brings bricks from left to right. Or
you're just a number in a way, right?
Yes, yes. And he sits in us and it says, you will never make it because you're nothing. And I am the king, because Pharaoh has two meanings in Hebrew, maybe more. Pharaoh we can divide to pera, like bad mouth, always speaking bad things. Or Oref Hashem, the nape of God, which is the opposite side of the light, is the darkness, and he always broadcasts darkness and pessimism at us.
So it's like this little nagging voice inside all of us.
Yes, you never make it.
It's not going to work out, right? Don't go to the party. It's not going to be fun. Or like,
and so much effort, and it's cold, and nobody will relate to you anyway. And if you talk to somebody, they say you have strange ideas, and they'll turn their back to you. And why did I even do this effort? And nothing is
just stay where you are, right?
Yes.
It might not be perfect, but at least it's familiar.
Familiar, yes. So, and we know the more we go for freedom and what we believe, the more we being beaten by the other forces, which says don't do it. You're shaking your foundations.
You're shaking the
shaking
boat.
your reality. Yes. You have to move to another country, and you have to leave your familiar surrounding, which anyways you don't have any connection to. But they try to shake us up whenever it's like demons in the cellar. This is why also Egypt is, in a way, the element of Egypt, the slavery, is dust and mud and earth.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so muddy. When people are put in the grave, where did I put? In the ground, in the mud, and this is the element in the cellar that are hunting us whenever we want to make a move forward and to
Pharaoh.
go for spirit. This is Pharaoh and his ministers and his policemen or inspectors. This is what they want,
Before
to beat us up, down.
But people like to complain about the government, right? But it's first of us ourselves that are doing this to ourselves.
Because Pharaoh Oref Hashem is the name of God, meaning Pharaoh sits at the back of us, where the head is connected to the body, and when the head is always lead for the one, Pharaoh governs the body, not just the physical part, but the limited body which has expiring date in space and time. This is where he governs. This is why he is the king of denial. The king of denial.
Okay.
Yeah, he did because the body always, time and space, denied the divinity, the infinity. This is why he's the king of denial. And see, he sits in each of every one of us.
So against all of this, the story goes here, against all of this slavery, when after catastrophe after catastrophe, the situation was so bad that people did not even think of anything else anymore. They were so locked down in these conditions of internalized slavery, in a way, when this Pharaoh has taken over to such a degree that there is not even an idea of an alternative anymore.
Yes.
Then suddenly comes this Moses character, within us again, perhaps also, not just historically, and says, here, there is an alternative.
Yeah.
And what is the alternative? The alternative is this name.
Yes.
These 4 letters. These 4 letters of
Yod He Vav He. Yes,
right.
the Tetra.
Which is interesting because perhaps what we can deduct, and I hope I'm not interpreting too much into it, you'll tell me, but perhaps the idea here is to say, you don't really have to have a full knowledge of an alternative way of life. You don't have to prophetically see the future in all of its details or something, how you will move to a different job, or you will change your surrounding and so on and so forth. But it's more about look in the past, perhaps. Look at the generations, look at your own life, how it appears for you, to you, and try to see a structure in it. And perhaps in the structure you will find something that speaks to you. In a way, it's very suggestive and open-ended. It's not like, here I am, and if you don't do what I tell you, there will be punishments. Right?
Yes, it's true. A person always look back and see that there's a point of, let's say, breaks in his life.
We all have these catastrophes, right? Like these 4-generation points of you translate him to the 4 elements. We all have these moments of catastrophe, of breaking points in our biographies. There's no
There's
life,
no
I
doubt.
think. Yeah.
If people want to deny it, they can deny it. But it's still
Right, you can present your biography like a perfect slate of success after success. But if people are honest, there are usually breaking points in this. And many times these points are actually the transformative points of growth.
Yes.
But people hit some kind of catastrophe, and then they reorganize themselves, and they overcome it, and they emerge stronger or more resilient than before.
It's true.
So
there is always way to go out. In any situation when a person is, there's always a little opening which a person can like have a sunrise, like place when the dawn comes and appears in his life or her life is always, it's always there waiting. The dawn is waiting for us.
And perhaps
It's-
that's
it's
all that
not
it takes,
over
is this
yet.
little glimpse of an alternative.
Yes. Yes.
So I think that's a nice way to conclude this little conversation.
Thank you.
So in that sense, I hope that whoever is listening or watching this later has gotten a bit of a glimpse of some kind of alternative, and that perhaps a good life might be possible, even if in the moment sometimes it seems everything is a bit far away or difficult or
Or impossible.
seemingly impossible, right? But there's this little voice, this little hunch somewhere that says perhaps there's an alternative, perhaps things could be different,
Yes.
right? And we don't always know exactly what, but that's the exciting adventure of all of this also. To have
True.
this hope for the future, to go towards the unknown and to see it, what is possible. So in that sense, as usual, if you have any questions about what we've discussed, I know it's a bit complex if you just heard all of this for the first time. You can look at the slides. We're going to put up a link to the presentation as well, so you can go through all of this at your own pace. Feel free to share it, comment on it, ask questions. We're always too happy to hear from you. So
Thank
in
you.
that sense, see you soon. Have a great day.
Thank you. Goodbye.